Imagine living in a world where the most powerful people, royals and celebrities, are often the least free. Behind the glamour of crowns and flashing cameras lie rules so bizarre, so suffocating, they feel more like chains than traditions. From kings forbidden to eat certain foods, to celebrities banned from speaking a single word in public without approval, these restrictions reveal the darker, stranger side of fame and power. Today, we're pulling back the curtain to uncover 50 of the strangest royal rules and celebrity restrictions ever made. And trust me, they're far more shocking than you think. In Japan's imperial house, emperors are forbidden from voting or even expressing political opinions, as though the weight of centuries locks their tongues. Imagine holding the symbolic throne of the oldest continuous monarchy on Earth, yet being silenced in the very arena that defines leadership. Power without voice, an eternal paradox, where silence becomes the loudest. Reminder that even the highest crown bows to invisible chains of tradition. Britain's queen once lived under a law banning her from ever eating shellfish in public, fearing food poisoning might disable the monarchy. Think about it. Millions feast casually on oysters or shrimp cocktails, but the monarch, a symbol of grandeur, must decline. The rule turns a simple plate of seafood into a forbidden luxury, showing how fragility and fear dictated what a ruler could taste. The King of Thailand is shielded by lèse-majesté laws so strict that even a crumpled banknote bearing his face can bring prison. Citizens whisper in fear, knowing every careless word could shatter lives. The monarch becomes untouchable, not just in flesh but in thought, existing almost as a deity where criticism equals sacrilege. The law bends reality itself, forcing reverence, even in silence. Princesses of ancient Korea's Joseon dynasty were forbidden to marry men below noble rank, even if love burned in their veins. They were locked inside golden cages, pawns of political chess where affection was treason. Imagine hearts shredded, youth fading within palace walls, condemned to wither unmarried because the king feared their unions could threaten his power. Princesses of ancient Korea's Joseon dynasty were forbidden to marry men below noble rank, even if love burned in their veins. They were locked inside golden cages, pawns of political chess where affection was treason. Imagine hearts shredded, youth fading within palace walls, condemned to wither unmarried because the king feared their unions could threaten his power. Bhutan's monarchs once faced the strangest of duties. They could not eat meat killed within their kingdom. Every cut of flesh had to be imported from outside, a paradox in a land of sacred Buddhist vows. Thus, kings dined on foreign slaughter while their own soil remained sanctified. Power bent not by rivals, but by faith itself, showing religion's invisible leash upon the crown. The late emperor of Ethiopia, Haile Selassie, lived under the strange restriction of being addressed only in ancient Gaia's titles. Common tongues could not reach him. Every word had to be dipped in holy reverence, as if language itself bowed. A king elevated so high, he was unreachable in human speech, bound to words carved from centuries, trapped in divine distance. In Monaco, the Grimaldi family still follows the unspoken rule. The reigning monarch cannot remarry without Parliament's approval, lest the throne lose legitimacy. Even love becomes bureaucracy, a royal heart petitioning lawmakers to exist. What should be sacred, marriage, transforms into politics, stripping intimacy from the very soul of the ruling line. France once bound its kings with the king's touch, the rule that they must cure scrofula by laying hands on the sick. It wasn't optional, it was destiny. Imagine thousands pressing forward, expecting miracle from a human hand. The king became a healer or a fraud, forced into divine theater, where refusal could unravel centuries of faith in his crown. Modern celebrities face equally suffocating chains. Hollywood contracts once forbade actresses from cutting their hair, gaining weight, or even dating publicly. Studio executives owned their image like property. Behind dazzling smiles were women caged by clauses, their bodies and choices dictated by ink on paper, proving fame often sells freedom as its steepest price. In the Vatican, popes are bound by the strangest paradox. They cannot resign freely. For centuries, It was believed a pontiff's crown was for life, death being the only release. Until Benedict XVI shattered that chain in 2013, popes lived knowing their last breath would be their last word of power. Imagine ruling the soul of billions but never allowed to lay down the burden unless the grave called. In 16th century England, Queen Elizabeth I forbade her ladies-in-waiting from marrying without her consent. Worse, if they dared fall in love secretly, punishment was exile or death. The Virgin Queen's own unmarried life became a curse upon others, turning affection into crime. Every glance, every touch between courtiers was a risk of losing everything under the jealous eye of a monarch. Japan's imperial princes cannot freely choose their wives. Marriages must be approved by the imperial household agency. Love is sifted like state policy, with bloodlines dissected as if the heart were a ledger. Princes become spectators in their own unions, where desire bends to a faceless council's pen. The strangest cruelty. Even emperors bow before bureaucrats when it comes to love. In Nepal, former kings once lived under a curse of law. They could never step foot in parliament buildings, even after losing the throne. A king who once ruled could be reduced to a ghost in his own country, forbidden from the very halls where power shifted. The rule wasn't just restriction, it was exile within one's homeland, where memory itself became a crime. Princess Diana was once forbidden to keep her own passport, her freedom of movement tightly bound by the palace. A global icon adored by millions, yet she needed permission to cross borders. The irony burned. The most photographed woman in the world was also the most trapped. Her life dictated not by her will, but by courtiers holding her very papers. Ancient China's emperors were forbidden from touching common soil. Wherever they walked, carpets or wooden paths had to be laid. To let divine feet touch earth was considered sacrilege. Imagine ruling half the known world yet never feeling dirt, grass, or stone underfoot. The restriction divorced emperors from humanity, binding them to an existence of floating gods who never touched life itself. In Sweden's royal house, heirs once had to gain parliament's approval, even to marry commoners. Love had to be debated by politicians, dissected by men in suits who never knew the taste of affection. A prince or princess could watch their happiness sink if lawmakers refused, their wedding dreams buried in political halls. The crown dictated not only duty, but heartbeats. Hollywood megastars like Marilyn Monroe were once forbidden by contracts from even speaking their real opinions in interviews. Every word was scripted, polished, approved. Imagine holding the world's gaze but never your own tongue, forced to perform authenticity while gagged by ink. Monroe's tragic glow was the face of an industry that caged not only her body, but her very voice. In medieval France, queens were forbidden from ruling as regents unless the king was dead or absent. Even the most capable women, who carried bloodlines and bore heirs, were shoved aside, their minds dismissed as decoration. Imagine standing beside the throne, watching chaos unfold, yet being told your crown is ornamental, not sovereign. Power dangled within reach, yet shackled by gender's invisible chains. South Korea's K-pop idols live under celebrity restrictions, so severe they resemble royal decrees. Contracts forbid dating, weight gain, even owning smartphones without approval. Behind sparkling stages and screaming fans lie prison walls of management companies. Youth traded freedom for fame, every heartbeat choreographed, every smile rehearsed. The restriction isn't tradition. It's slavery disguised as stardom. In Russia's Tsarist court, heirs were forbidden to cut their hair until age 7, as if strands held divine protection. Golden locks became chains, dangling reminders that a child belonged first to tradition, then to themselves. Even playtime was shadowed by the rule, innocence tied to an ancient superstition that the scissors could sever destiny itself. Queen Victoria forbade her children from eating garlic at court, declaring it vulgar. The monarch who ruled half the globe could dine on exotic delicacies, yet a humble clove was banished. Guests entering royal dinners lived under the silent law of scent, breath policed more fiercely than politics, a reminder that in palaces, flavor could be more scandalous than treason. In Japan, empresses were long forbidden from ever ruling as sovereigns, no matter their capability. The chrysanthemum throne, oldest dynasty in the world, closed its gates to women. Imagine centuries of princesses born brilliant, yet condemned as shadows, their blood divine, but their sex disqualified. Thrones of silk transformed into cages, their crowns existing only in silence. In medieval England, it was forbidden for royals to marry foreigners without Parliament's consent. Hearts that dared look beyond borders were strangled by politics. The crown feared foreign influence, yet it killed love at home. Princes became soldiers of diplomacy. Their marriages treaties, their wedding beds war rooms, intimacy destroyed for the safety of empires. Celebrity contracts in the golden age of Hollywood once forbade stars from being photographed without makeup. Their faces belonged not to them, but to studios, polished masks crafted for the public. Imagine waking in the morning and realizing even your tired reflection is illegal to reveal. Stardom turned humanity into property, where skin itself was commodified. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs were forbidden to show weakness or illness in public. Even coughing was hidden behind curtains. To appear mortal was treason against divinity. A god-king was not allowed to sweat, stumble, or bleed where others could see. The restriction built legends but destroyed men, forcing rulers to die in silence, their fragility erased from history. In Bhutan, monarchs were once forbidden to travel abroad freely. Every departure required sacred rituals, as though leaving might sever their spiritual bond to the land. A king could command armies but not step outside mountains without prayer. Freedom shrank to geography. Sovereignty chained not by enemies but by invisible strings of superstition. Hollywood's morality clauses of the 1930s forbade actors from any behavior deemed immoral, from drunkenness to divorce. Stars lived under constant surveillance, every misstep risking their entire career. Imagine your private life becoming a battlefield, your bedroom a stage for unseen judges. Fame was not earned but rented, at the cost of living as yourself. In Mughal India, royal women were forbidden from showing their faces to the public, locked behind purdah. Their beauty existed like myth, spoken of but unseen. The restriction turned queens into phantoms of silk, rulers without visibility, women erased from their own reign, power wrapped in veils, leaving only whispers behind palace screens. South Korea's royal court once forbade kings from personally handling money, fearing it degraded their sacred image. The ruler of all wealth couldn't touch a single coin. Imagine commanding treasuries, yet never feeling the cold metal of currency in hand. Sovereignty became abstraction, wealth divine but untouchable. Kings transformed into symbols too fragile for reality. In ancient Japan, emperors were forbidden to look upon death. Funerals, corpses, even mourning rites were denied them, for it was believed contact with death polluted their divinity. Imagine being worshipped as a living god, yet never allowed to grieve for your own kin. Tears became forbidden currency, withheld by law, turning sorrow into an eternal exile. During France's Bourbon dynasty, kings were forbidden from sleeping alone. They were required to be surrounded by courtiers, servants, and guards even in their chambers. Privacy was outlawed. A royal bed was not sanctuary but stage, where every yawn, every dream was watched. The restriction robbed kings of the most human refuge, solitude. In Britain, heirs to the throne are still forbidden from flying together on the same plane without official permission. The fear is lineage could be wiped in one crash, so families fracture even in travel, children torn from parents mid-journey. Safety becomes separation, and affection bends to protocol, proving even heir itself is regulated by the crown. Ancient Persian kings lived under a strange restriction. No one could look upon them without permission. Even a casual glance could be punished by death. The ruler's face became forbidden knowledge, a sight guarded as fiercely as sacred scripture. Imagine ruling millions yet being unseen, your existence half divine, half phantom, your very image a weapon of fear. In Hollywood's early decades, actors were forbidden from revealing their true ages. Studios erased birth certificates, fabricated timelines, and forced stars into eternal youth. Wrinkles became scandal, birthdays a liability. Lives were rewritten not by destiny, but by marketing men, turning time itself into a forbidden truth. In Spain's royal tradition, monarchs were forbidden from marrying Protestants for centuries. Religion carved boundaries sharper than swords, reducing love to doctrine. Princes and princesses became prisoners of faith, their marriages sanctified not by affection, but by dogma. Hearts bent beneath theology, proving love was less holy than church law. Ethiopia's emperors were forbidden to eat in public, for to chew, swallow, or spill crumbs was considered degrading for a divine ruler. Meals became rituals hidden from sight, kings dining like ghosts. Imagine a ruler starving through ceremonies, smiling at crowds while hunger gnawed within. Even food, the most human need, became a secret crime. Hollywood singers like Frank Sinatra were once forbidden from changing labels without brutal financial penalties. Contracts bound voices like chains, their songs not their own. A melody hummed freely in a room could cost fortunes if sung outside corporate permission. Music, born of soul, was transformed into shackles of ink and greed. In Cambodia, royal women were forbidden from leaving palace walls without armed escort, even for worship. Temples became distant stars, unreachable without permission. Freedom of movement, the simplest right, was erased. Gold palaces became prisons of velvet, queens and princesses reduced to captives guarded by spears. Medieval Europe forbade kings from bathing too often, fearing weakness from water. Hygiene itself was taboo, filth equated with strength. Monarchs carried crowns on heads thick with sweat and grime, their skin marked by superstition. The restriction warped purity into danger, leaving history's rulers both powerful and foul. In Japan's imperial law, royal family members who marry commoners must surrender their titles entirely. Princesses step from palaces into anonymity, trading crowns for ordinary lives. Love cost them immortality, their names erased from records of the throne. What should be liberation often becomes exile, where devotion strips away centuries of bloodline privilege. In 17th century England, King Charles I was forbidden from entering the House of Commons. To step inside was to defy parliamentary sovereignty. When he broke the rule in 1642, it sparked civil war. A monarch's own parliament became forbidden ground, turning power into trespass and showing how even kings can be outlaws in their own nation. In Bhutan, citizens once lived under a strange decree, forbidding television and the internet until 1999. Imagine a whole nation cut from screens, while monarchs enforced silence against modernity itself. The world advanced, but Bhutan remained in deliberate isolation, the restriction turning time into a barrier no satellite could pierce. In Hollywood, Elvis Presley was forbidden by contract to travel outside the United States for performances. Fans in Europe and Asia worshipped him from afar, but his manager's restrictions clipped his wings. The king of rock and roll ruled music yet never touched half his empire. Fame became global, but his freedom remained local. Ancient Mayan kings were forbidden from bleeding publicly without ritual. Bloodletting had to be ceremonial, never accidental. A cut finger outside ritual was sacrilege. Even pain was scripted, suffering turned into spectacle. Imagine living where agony must be rehearsed, where human fragility could only exist when cloaked as divine theater. In Britain, royals are forbidden from signing autographs. A simple scroll of ink could be forged, abused, or politicized. Fans begging for signatures leave with silence, their heroes' hands bound by paranoia. Even identity on paper becomes taboo, a monarch's handwriting more dangerous than decrees of war. In Tibet, the Dalai Lama is forbidden to marry, forever chained to celibacy as both leader and monk. He rules hearts across continents, yet must deny his own. Loneliness becomes ritual, intimacy forbidden by robes. A man worshipped as compassion incarnate is also a prisoner of solitude. Hollywood child stars once faced contracts forbidding them from growing up too fast. Weight, height, even friendships were monitored, their innocence sold as product. Imagine puberty policed, laughter choreographed, youth scripted. The restriction turned childhood into a stage where reality itself was banned. In France, nobles once lived under the restriction that only the king could wear certain colors, like purple or gold-threaded fabrics. Fashion itself became hierarchy, dye transforming into decree. Even cloth became crime, turning garments into declarations of rebellion. Identity stitched by rule, beauty outlawed by monopoly. In Saudi Arabia, royals were forbidden from appearing in casual clothing in public. No jeans, no simplicity, only robes and splendor. To dress as ordinary was to insult monarchy itself. Imagine being unable to taste normalcy, every thread woven into theater. Even fabric betrayed freedom, proving power doesn't just crown you, it clothes you in chains.